Hi, hello, and welcome back to the HII Method. My name is Jen Hatz. I am the host of the HII Method podcast and also the founder of the HII Method, a holistic, integrative, and innovative approach to assessing and optimizing human health, well-being, and performance. And I'm partnered with Neuroforce One, a human performance company that has been training champions for years, and they offer training and assessments in their facility as well as remote options available. And today I want to share a story about sacrifice and service and resilience, and really what this all means and why this is an important, combination of topics, really, but really why this story specifically has kind of spurred an entire movement for me, really, throughout my entire life. So the topic, really, first of all, of service and of sacrifice it's far-reaching, and it's deeply impactful for those involved and for those who are not immediately involved but are in some way indirectly impacted by those who do serve and sacrifice. And what I mean by service or sacrifice is really any sort of an initiative or an objective to serve a higher purpose. And in doing so, in serving that higher purpose, there is in fact a sacrifice that takes place in some way, shape, or form. It's a sacrifice of time or energy, or really making a sacrifice into the unknown of just being willing to serve in whatever capacity, not knowing what the outcome is, whether that's, beneficial or not for your health, for your life. And so this entire topic really looks at those different ways in which we may be serving in some capacity and the sacrifices that we make in serving in some capacity. And so for some of those forms of service, that could mean serving your country. It could mean serving your community. It could mean serving the common good, serving for a purpose that is larger than yourself in order to help with the common good, with the collective, really. And so these different ways in which we may be of service to something, of service to a higher purpose, of service to someone. It can span across, from like military and veterans to first responders to healthcare workers to anyone involved in nonprofit efforts, and really even far further expansive beyond that. And anyone who feels called to work in some capacity, to give part of themselves in some capacity to serve this purpose, in service of this purpose, and then therefore the sacrifice that they're making for this service that they're doing, because the sacrifice itself is something that is either a sacrifice of a known outcome, that you're willing to sacrifice a known outcome for an unknown outcome, or it could be sacrificing time and energy and resources that are maybe very limited for yourself, but you're willing to make that sacrifice in order to serve this purpose. It could be sacrifice of time spent with your family, with your loved ones. There are so many ways in which sacrifices are made for those who are serving in some capacity, serving a larger purpose in some capacity. And the reason why we want to look at this entire combination of what it means to serve and what it means to sacrifice, really in this view of why there's a need for resilience about all this, because we are all human beings. Every single one of us is a human being. And even though we may be feeling called to put ourselves forth in service of something that is greater than ourselves, at the end of the day, we are still a human being, and we only have so much to give before we have to really stop giving out and instead give back to ourselves. So there is this, unique contrast of wanting to give everything we have to that calling, that purpose, that service, but also needing to have that sense of boundaries, first of all, personal boundaries of how much more can I give of myself before I have to give back to myself. And really knowing when and where you're at your capacity or at your limit, and what that means for your physical and mental health, to protect your physical and mental health so that you can, in fact, still contribute and serve in whatever capacity that you feel called to do. And that way you are not making sacrifices to your physical and mental health for the sake of this service, because those sacrifices are already large enough. And there's only so much that you can give before it's too much. And so a story that I want to share with you about really someone who I knew specifically who I think it served a larger purpose in a very grand way. This was actually my former supervisor when I was back in grad school, and I was working through all of my internships while in grad school. I was volunteering, I was doing all these different things. And this individual was my direct supervisor for one of those locations. Specifically, this individual was the director of nutrition for this entire collegiate athletic program. And so during the period of time that I was volunteering and interning there, this individual was my supervisor at that time, but otherwise she was also working full time. And when I say full time, I mean, we're talking anywhere from 60 to 100-hour weeks. Like this is not for the faint of heart, this type of line of work. It's extremely demanding of every bit of your time and energy and resources. And it's a full 100% commitment of you. And there's no, side hustle. There's no time for family. There's no time for just time for yourself. It's a completely full, like I said, anywhere from 60 hours a week up to like 80 to 100 hours a week, depending on the time of season or what the demands are. And so working under this individual and experiencing, first of all, having the ability really to witness what she was doing in her role and the high amount of energy, the high amount of output that she was putting forth at all times. And it was incredible right off the bat to see this person come into this role as she was a new hire at one point in time when I was like just starting in my internship rotations. And so watching the changes being made immediately to the entire program, the entire facility, and it was all such positive and progressive changes. And I felt so excited to be able to work with someone and under someone who was making these types of changes so immediately and so, like I said, in a positive and progressive way. And so it was really, I felt very fulfilled. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is a phenomenal experience. And I soaked up every bit of it. Every ounce that I could soak up, I soaked up. But I was also in and out with a few other areas, going to classes, going to other internship rotations and other part-time jobs and volunteer work. So my experience of what I was witnessing and what I was experiencing within that one specific line of work in that facility was minimal, if you could say, compared to what she was experiencing, where she was there full-time, like 110%, everything she had was there at that location and doing everything possible. And what I saw over a matter of, it was less than 3 years really, that her capacity was changing and her state of her mindset, her state of health, her state of physical health and mental health was all changing. And it seemed like the amount that she was carrying was too much for her to handle. And that was something that I kept thinking to myself as an intern watching this, thinking, wow, this seems like far too high of a workload. Like she's not able to handle this well. There's no one that's there for her to really delegate out. There's really no one to help take the brunt of some of the work. There's really it didn't seem like a support system to help her to do her best at her job. Instead, it seemed the opposite, that there was, in an absence of support, there was instead an excessive amount of excess work that was unnecessary for one person, let alone for anyone. But it was really shocking to see in such a short period of time how a highly functioning individual making such massive, positive progress for the program was so quickly, in a sense, drowning under the amount of expectations, the workload, the unrealistic and unsustainable type of schedule and demands being placed on her. And so it was shocking to watch, but she also kept a very, I think, an optimistic viewpoint on it. And she was open about sharing with myself and the other interns about where she was with just in herself, her mental health, her physical health, saying that, at one point in time that she was excited because she was starting to work through and speak with a therapist and work with a new psychiatrist who was, allowing her to try new medications, new antidepressants. And she was actively trying to take a role in promoting and optimizing herself and her mental health and how she was able to function on a day-to-day basis, because it was otherwise it was an unnecessary and very toxic amount of expectations and workload that was being placed on her, without room and support for her as a human being, really. And so what I saw in just a few short months from that point in time when she was initially explaining how excited she was that she was, doing these different things, like I said, speaking with a therapist and trying different medications and doing things that she was hoping were going to help benefit her mental health so that she could turn this situation around in her favor and come out of this, what felt like a slump or an unfortunate amount of just not being able to handle the work and the exhaustion that was coming with it. And in just a few short months, it all just completely changed in a sense that what the changes that were happening just kind of became that much worse. And so by the end of that season, so that entire, when she was starting all these changes, that was the beginning of football season. By the end of football season, that was actually my final week, my final couple days with grad school, and I was graduating. And so at that point in time, actually on the day that I graduated, it's December 15th, 2018. So on that day that I graduated, that evening, late that evening, she ended up taking her own life. And I found out about the next day, and it shocked me because, first of all, what shocked me was that not only was this a highly functioning individual, and she and I, we were the same age. At that point in time, we were both 29 years old. We were the same age. And the absolute, like I said, there's no word to describe the shock that you feel when someone who you feel very much similar to and someone you looked up to and someone you were with, and now you're in completely different points where here I just graduated and I'm about to start my career. And I just watched someone who is so very, similar to me just have the complete opposite, and that she's gone now, and so the feeling of, first of all, trying to take that in was immense. I still, to this day, it's still something that is difficult to sit with. But the first reaction I had when I heard the news about it, my first gut reaction, the first thing that I said was, I can't believe she actually did it. Because I had been seeing warning signs for months leading up to that. And I didn't do anything, at least at that point in time, beyond just listening to what she was saying and taking it in as, okay, well, she seems to have it under control. She seems to be, doing what she can, and it's not my place to do anything else. And so I distanced myself from stepping in and taking any kind of a role to help someone, because I felt like it, first of all, was not my place. And I also felt like, well, she seems like she has it under control. She seems, she's a professional. She knows what she's doing. She can handle this. And so it was this sense that I wasn't doing what I needed to do, what I knew I should have done, even though I was seeing warning signs. And I didn't step up in some capacity and do something more, do anything more, really. And so that's something that weighs very heavily on me. But so that entire experience really set a tone for me professionally, because that was my last experience of school before I was right about to start working professionally in the same type of role that she was in. And I saw very quickly, it was just a few months later that I was in fact in a similar role that she was in. And only a few months after that I saw exactly what I was seeing her experiencing, what I was witnessing from her in her experience. That was something that I was feeling for myself in my experience in that role, where the amount, the demands, the expectations, the workload was far beyond what I could handle. I had nothing left to give. And it all of a sudden clicked in my head that I can completely understand her line of thinking of where she was at, that she was at a point where she had nothing left to give. And the thought of continuing on, the thought of continuing with this schedule, this workload, these expectations feels so exhausting that the last thing you want to do is to take one more day towards it. And all you want is to have a drastic change and to just give yourself a break, to just give yourself a rest, to just take care of yourself for one day. And I can so clearly see that line of thinking now after experiencing it for myself, that there's a shift that happens in your mind when you have become depleted of everything that you require. all of your basic needs, your physical and mental health, your basic needs, you require that on a day-to-day basis. And when you have nothing left to give, that is when the option or the thought of making a drastic decision in order to give yourself rest, in order to give yourself a break from the demands, becomes that much more realistic to you. And this is a very scary line that can be crossed, or that can be flirted with, really. And this entire world really of us taking care of ourselves, I think is such, unfortunately, it's so stigmatized and it's so silenced and unspoken. And yet everyone at some point in time reaches their limit and reaches their capacity of what they can give. And it seems like it's those who are in the most, I'll say the most highest serving roles, the ones who are making the highest degrees of sacrifices, the ones who are sacrificing every bit of themselves, their physical and mental health, their time, their energy, their resources. They're sacrificing time with their families, time with relationships, time with themselves. And that sacrifice can only get you so far when you are depleting yourself of what you truly need. And so this entire situation spurred in me the need to look at really this line of work of, putting out a high amount of service and a high amount of sacrifice for what you're doing, and flipping it around to understand that every single person is a human being and only has so much to give. And for every person who is in service in some way, whether you are serving your country, serving your community, serving a greater good that is just a purpose larger than yourself, in any sort of capacity that you are serving and sacrificing, you need to know how to take care of yourself physically and mentally. And in doing that, hopefully we can start to unwind this tightly wound, big knot of silence that we have around the topic and around wanting to help others and wanting to discuss this with others, and making this grand assumption that if someone is highly functioning on the outside, that they must be fully capable of handling what's ever happening internally, because again, we are all human beings. And so the last thing I ever want is to make that mistake that I made of making an assumption that someone who is a professional, someone who is highly functioning, and someone who seems on the surface to have it all together, or to be doing the work to have it all together, to make that assumption that that's enough. And to know that there's still more I can do. There's still more that I have the capacity to give for anyone and everyone, because we all need help in some type of way. And the reason why I felt so strongly called to that, and the reason why I even saw warning signs and identified them as warning signs, was because of my own experience early on in life as a teenager. And that was really when my entire journey through mental health and understanding mental health started, was when I was 14 years old. And it has been this nonstop process. It's been my entire life. And I found really my purpose in this because it has been a continuing theme my entire life of understanding our mental health in combination with our physical health. And then from that combination, understanding this combination, that your brain and your body are not separate, that they are completely aligned and connected and synced up in every sense of the terms. And so understanding this, and then knowing what are the different factors at play that are within my control, what are the factors at play that are not in my control, and what can I do about this in order to best optimize my physical and mental health. And so this ends up looking like, for me, my now PhD studies, my PhD work towards PhD in neuroscience specifically, is looking at the nutrition and lifestyle factors that impact physical and mental health, stress and trauma, and CTE and neurodegeneration. And it's because of this entire lifetime I've had now of experience of this exact combination of factors, that there is something to understanding your physical and mental health, and the lifestyle factors, the environmental factors, the social factors, everything that goes into your life and your life experience. And we look at what is within our control, what is not within our control, so that we have at least the best capacity, or the best control within our capacity to optimize ourselves. And so I take a stance that is very heavily, I'll say, anti-psychiatric medications. And that's because of my experience personally as a teenager, being immediately put through the medical model and prescribed antidepressants before any other actions were taken, for talk therapy with a therapist, for anything addressing my physical health, what I was eating, what I was doing with physical activity, any, partying, drinking, smoking, anything like that. None of that was addressed until I was first medicated. And I so strongly disagree with that approach. I think that especially for a teenager to have have a neurologically impacting medication, so a medication that is basically going to impact how you're functioning cognitively and neurologically. I think that is the absolute last resort that you should ever turn to, because there are so many other factors at play, and we are all experiencing a wide variety of different emotions and emotional experiences at all times. And so to have this cut and dry view of how our mental health functions, that if there's something that is feeling like a heavy feeling, that's somehow bad or wrong and needs to be corrected with medication, I so strongly disagree with that. And so what I've done over time, as I've studied in different disciplines and as I'm going to continue to research specifically for neuroscience, is developing what is a holistic and integrative and innovative model. And that's what the HII Method is. And it's looking at, like I said, the lifestyle factors. It's looking at everything else that goes into your life, because the last thing that we need to do is to medicate ourselves away into this false perception of control over our emotions, over our feelings, over our experiences. Instead, we need to flip that around and start to acknowledge our feelings and experiences, start to acknowledge our physical health, our mental health, our capacity to be able to serve in whatever capacity that we're being asked of, and to fully understand and know where our limits are. What is it that is within our control? How much more can we give? And when is it enough? And when do we need to give back to ourselves? So this entire approach, this holistic, integrative, and innovative approach to your physical and mental health, is part of not just my research, but then what I'm doing besides the research, besides the PhD route, is turning the HII Method into a nonprofit organization. So right now, the HII Method is a not-for-profit, and I am in the process of formally forming a nonprofit organization that is the HII Method. And it's going to be focused on research and education, and really heavily focused specifically on education that is publicly accessible, that is completely free to absolutely anyone and everyone, because their education, first of all, should be free. Like, we'll just say that, but specifically education related to taking care of yourself, your physical mental health, should absolutely be out there for the public at all times. It should be part of our normal curriculum for every single person, no matter what stage of schooling, no matter where you're at, no matter what type of school. Like, this should be known. This should be something that we are taught from day one and continually reinforced from day one. So that entire initiative for the nonprofit side of things for the HII Method, again, focus on research and education. And so this combination that I'm moving towards, we're working on the PhD route with research and then translating research into education for the public. This starts actually right now I have a course that I have put together, that I initially put this course together in order to help athletes specifically to take care of themselves physically and mentally. But now I'm expanding it out to include absolutely anyone and everyone. And what I'm doing as far as, trying to transition into this nonprofit route, this course is now going to be offered completely free to anyone and everyone who wants to take this, who wants to test and learn and really absorb this knowledge about how to take care of yourselves physically and mentally. And all that I ask is that you fill out an anonymous survey before taking the course, and then you'll receive the course. And it's a 12 chapter course, but it's self-paced. You can work at it at whatever time and length of time and pacing that you want, and you get to keep it forever. It is yours to keep. And then having a follow-up survey at the end that you would fill out. Again, the surveys are anonymous, so your personal information would never be shared in any way, shape, or form. It is strictly for me to understand the role that the course is playing in helping with your quality of life, helping with your self-efficacy, and helping with your overall education on these different topics, everything related from nutrition to hydration to sleep to stress to alcohol, and any changes in your behaviors because of that. And so this is going to help me to understand where and in what ways I may need to adjust the course in some way, so that way the overall benefit and the experience itself is better for those of you who are taking the course. But also, in order to best optimize the education I am putting out, having this feedback and having this, what's called impact reporting, is what is really required, if anything, to help support and I'll say like give the stamp of approval that this approach is in fact working, that providing education to the public for free does in fact work to help the public. And so that's also part of having a nonprofit organization, is that you are publicly displaying your impact reporting, that you have some gauge of the impact of what you're doing and whether or not it is working and what you're doing about it to change it. So all of that has to be very transparent and put out there. So the impact reporting, the statistics of the surveys is what will be posted publicly. That has to be posted publicly. But otherwise, individual information, your demographic information, anything related to you specifically is completely anonymous. That will never be like shared at all in any way, shape, or form. It's completely anonymous. But if anything, the course itself, hopefully that it's something that you can gain from, or that you can test your knowledge on. If this is an area that you already understand a lot of things, but you want to kind of see where you're at and test your knowledge, or if you truly do want to just experience the course and see in what ways it can help you. I am going to have a link in the show notes it'll lead to the course, but it's first going to lead to the questionnaire that you fill out, that anonymous survey. And then once you fill that out, you will receive the course. And again, that is your course to have and to hold and to keep forever. So I hope that this has helped in some way to hopefully inspire some, that wherever you're at right now, that it can only go up. No matter where you're at, if you're in a good position, if you're not in a good position, that just understand that you are not alone, that every single one of us is a human being. Every single one of us has a capacity within us to serve a purpose, to serve that higher purpose, so to serve a common good, to serve our country, to serve our community in whatever capacity. And that at the same time, we also have to give back to ourselves. So please feel free to click that link in the show notes to check out the course for yourself. And if you have any questions about this topic, please feel free to drop a comment below. And otherwise, if you can like, share, and subscribe so that we can spread the love and spread the light. Thank you. Bye-bye.